Good morning and welcome to part 7 of the Viking Chair build. Today we are going to take the boards that we planed down in part 6 on the thickness planer. We planed down to 3/4 of an inch thick. We're going to take those boards and we're going to cut them to our final length. And to do that I'm going to introduce you to a new saw. Now this saw is a Bosch Axial glide miter saw. And it's a compound miter saw as well, but rather than slides on rails, it has an axial glide system where it has a couple arms that allow this unit to glide in a little bit of different fashion, and it also allows the saw to stay closer to the wall, and it saves us some room, and it was a perfect fit for this countertop that we had here. But I wanted to just show you this because it has a little bit of a different setup rather than our what's the green one called over there again? Is it a Milwaukee? No. Is it a Hitachi? The Hitachi back there. So I wanted to show you the Bosch just because it is a little bit different setup. I also wanted to show you how to check the Bosch or any of these sliding saws for square. Because this is a vinyl cut, we want to make sure the machine is set up properly. So to do that, the first thing we do is unplug it. And we can check to see if the blade is running at 90 degrees to the table. So we're just going to lift the guard up, take a square, and this square here is called a tri-square. And we'll take this tri-square and put it on the base or the table of the machine, and we'll just put that against the blade. I'll have to bring this down a bit, and I'll put that against the blade, and I'll just look for light in between the tri-square and the blade. And if there's light, if it's not an even gap, or if there's no gap at all, we want to take and we want to move that head one way or the other. Okay? And on this machine you can do that with this knob and these indents here. We're not going to do that because it's perfect. It's already set up. And we can also check to see if the machine is out of alignment this way as well. And we'll do that with a framing square. So we'll put the framing square here, and we want to make sure that this is running 90 degrees. So we'll put that on the saw and we'll line it up. I'll just lift that up, the guard, and I'll put the edge of the blade against the framing square, and then I'll just bring out the saw. And as I'm bringing it out, I want to make sure that it's not pushing the saw or that gap is getting bigger. Because if it's an even gap, that means we're cutting at 90 degrees. If I'm just touching those teeth just a little bit on the slide, then the saw is set up. And it is. It's perfect. It's all been set up. And it's not a bad idea to check that once in a while. And you just need the framing square and the tri-square to do that. This miter saw isn't on a nice really big table, so we don't have the support we do with our other miter saw. So what I've done is I've made this little Bosch extend-a-block. There it is. And I can put that here for boards that are longer so that we have that support. So these long boards need that support, otherwise it's dangerous because then it wants to fall off the saw. This saw also has a side extension table. If I loosen this little red lever, I can pull this in and out. And then we tighten that back in. So we have a couple ways that we can make this a little bit longer. So we can cut longer boards, that is. Okay, so our finished lengths on our boards that we need are 37 inches and 30 inches. And on this board right here, we have, what do we have? We have about 37.5 inches. The first thing we want to do is cut one of the ends off so it's straight on both of the boards, and then we can go ahead and measure our final length and do the cut. Now, in a previous video, I think it was part 2 of the miter saw video, I talked about the cardinal 3-cut method and how to prevent kickback. All of those apply, so if you forgot what I said with those, you can go ahead and watch that video again. All the safety applies where you're standing when you're using the machine. All that still applies. You're going to find with this, because we have a finished edge, you're not going to have to worry about that 3-cut method. You're going to just take and do a single cut. So I'm going to set that up. Again, clamp. We have a little bit different clamping mechanism here, but basically the same concept. We're going to bring down the saw so that I'm just cutting off a little bit. I'll just slide that to make sure I'm cutting off a little bit on that whole board. And once I know that I am, kind of as little as possible, so we leave as much as we can from the other side, I'll clamp this down. Now that that's clamped down, my left hand is in line with the clamp and my right hand does the cutting. Again, we can just do this in one fluid cut, and the machine 99% of the time will not kick back when you have a finished edge and your board is tight against that fence. I have had it kick back with a nice smooth edge, but it's generally been with spruce. Spruce sometimes have some tension in the board, and because of the tension it can kick back. But with maple, with oak, walnut, generally those woods don't seem to have that tension in that board, and then you won't get the kickback. So unless you're cutting a piece of spruce, you're not going to get kickback. We're just going to do one long fluid cut. The vent gates are up here. Make sure your vents are on. Again, I'm shooting video, so we'll just leave them off for now. The blade, or the saw comes out, starts in the air. Oh, unplugged it. Make sure you plug the machine back in after you're done checking it. So bring the saw out, start in the air, and this has a bit of a kick to it and a different feel than the other sliding miter saw. So make sure you're nice and high, start it. Let the blade stop and then bring it up. So this is my long board. So it needs to be 37 inches long. I can also check after I've done a cut, and I'll check with a big square to make sure that I'm cutting square. I can put this on that edge, and generally what I do is I put it up to the light and I look for any gaps because I can see light through there, and it's pretty good. So I'm happy with that. We'll leave that how it is. Now I can take my tape measure and I can measure the 37. When I'm taking and measuring the 37, I'm going to make a mark and put an X on the waist side so I know which side the blade goes on. And then I can turn it around under the clamp, and I'll just pull it over. Make sure my block's under the board. I'll just pull it over until I'm cutting to the right of the line or on that X. Okay, then I can clamp it down. And I can do another cut. So I'll bring it out, start in the air. Let the blade stop and bring it up. And you can see I don't have very much waste. A couple little pieces. So that's perfect. Worked out nicely. And this board is now to the proper width and length of 12 inches by 37 inches long. It's a pretty nice piece. So I can set this aside, and I can do the same with the other board. And I'm going to just change my camera angle to give you some close-ups of that. I only have one camera, so I can't run two cameras at the same time. So I'm going to change my camera angle to show you some close-ups of those cuts. That's probably going to be all integrated into the video, but that's basically it. When you're done, make sure you clean up your saw. You can just unplug this and clean up all the dust. Any scrap wood you put in the scrap wood boxes that we generally have over there. If they're small or if they're bigger, we save them in the back. And that pretty much brings us to the end of the Axial Glide Bosch miter saw. The next step after this is to take our boards and to measure out the little holes that we need to cut so that the boards will fit together and create a chair-like design. So I hope you enjoyed and have a good day.